On today's child seat review segment, we're taking a look at the 2014 Ford Focus Sedan. Now, 2015 model year is bringing a significant refresh both inside and outside the Focus. However, most things as far as child seats go are not changing. So the dimensions of the sedan are not going to change, the dimensions of the back seat, the front seats, etc. So this review will also apply to 2015 model year vehicles in case you're interested. As with all of my child review segments, we're going to be using a Graco Classic Ride 50 child seat today. Now this is a convertible child seat, which means it is suitable for forward-facing or rearward-facing installation and children from between 4 to 50 pounds according to Graco. As always, it's important to follow both the child seat manufacturer's specifications and instructions and those relating to the vehicle you're going to be installing the child seat in. So you want to be sure and read both instruction manuals. Now with rearward-facing child seats, you do want to use this little installation guide right here. It's this little plastic raceway with a little ball in it, and you want to get that installed in the vehicle so that way the ball is in the green zone when you're on a level surface. It's important to keep in mind that in the video you're watching, sometimes the installation angle may look a little bit tricky, but I'm always going to be installing these seats per the manufacturer's instructions both for the seat and the vehicle. If you have any questions about installing a child seat safely in your new car or your old car, be sure and find a local certified child seat inspector or certified child seat installer. There'll be some links down there in the description below. The Focus is a compact sedan, so we don't have as much room on the inside as you would find obviously in a larger vehicle. So the first thing we're going to do is get in this front seat and move this front seat forward till my seat is positioned so that way I have about 1.5 inches of legroom left right here between my knees and the dashboard. Then I'm going to adjust the seat back cushion till it's in a comfortable but decidedly upright position. Now let's see how much room we have back there. With this front seat adjusted for me at 6 feet tall, it wasn't possible for me to insert this rearward-facing child seat safely in the vehicle. Safely is an important consideration because even though that ball is in the green zone in its raceway at this angle right here, I don't have any clearance between this front seat back and the child seat. It is important to keep about 1 inch or so between the front seat and the child seat because in a rearward style collision, you can get some decent movement in a front seat backwards and you don't want that front seat to impact a child seat. The Focus's performance is very similar to most compact vehicles in this segment. Now in general, the more rear legroom you get, so the more distance we have between this front seat and the rear seat back, then the easier it is going to be to stick a child seat in the back. So you will find a little bit more room in something like a Nissan Sentra, but just about every other entry in this segment is going to perform very similarly to this. Now if you were say 5'10" or 5'8", you could easily fit in the front seat comfortably with about 1 inch of knee room between this front seat and the dashboard, and you could insert a child seat in the back. It's just not possible for me. Vehicles with 3 sets of latch anchors in the US are very rare, but there are a few vehicles out there sold in our country where you can use the outboard set of latch anchors for an inboard child seat as well. It is important to keep in mind that the standard spacing for a latch anchor is 11 inches apart, and right here in the Focus, these latch anchors are about 18 inches apart, so they are further apart than the standard, and that means that although Ford says you can use the latch anchors on the outboard seats for the center seat, the child seat manufacturer will also need to agree with that, and you won't be able to use a child seat with fixed latch anchors. They will have to be the variety with webbing, like seatbelt webbing, and again, you have to make sure that both the vehicle and the child seat agree that you can use the latch anchors for the center position, but the Focus is one of the few vehicles that will allow that. Although I did have to remove the headrests for both the outboard and the center seat position in order for these forward-facing child seats to install properly, there is enough distance between the child seat and the top tether anchor right there for these very large buckles that the Graco Classic Ride 50 child seat uses to install tightly and properly. When a forward-facing child seat is properly installed, there should be no more than 1/2 inch of movement if you really tug on the child seat, and this child seat is very firmly fixed here in the center. This brings me to my 3 across child seat test. Like most compact sedans, things are a little bit tight back here, but I can close the door on these 3 child seats. The Graco Classic Ride 50 child seat is very middle of the road in terms of overall dimensions. It's one of the most popular seats, and that's why I selected it for my child seat tests. Now, if you do plan on putting 3 child seats in the back of a Focus, you can do it, but I would suggest finding narrower child seats because it is going to be safer. This child seat is touching the door right here, and it is ideal to have a little bit of room between the child seat and the door because we do have side curtain airbags like most vehicles sold in America, and they do descend right here. You want to make sure that they actually descend between the child seat and the door, not into the child seat, because that's less safe for your child. The concern is primarily right here up top on the child seat rather than down here on the side, because there is about 1.5 inches of room between the door handle, this portion of the door, and the child seat itself, with a little bit of extra room right there between the child seat and the door in this bulk portion of the door handle. So the overall dimensions back here are very favorable to 3 child seats, but you do want to find narrower child seats if you do plan on fitting this many in the car. One nice touch about the spacing across this rear bench seat in the Focus is that the center child seat is actually capable of sitting right here in the middle of the bench seat. And I know that sounds a little bit strange, But a wide variety of vehicles out there, the center child seat can't sit right in the center of the bench seat because of the way the bench is actually configured. And that does make it a little bit more difficult to fit 3 child seats across the back. In the Focus, however, this center seat is very centered right here in the middle. The center seat is also not interfering with the belt buckle operation for the outboard seats, so it is possible to fit an adult right here next to the center child seat, and you won't have the child seat sitting right on your buckle. The Focus has a reasonable amount of cargo, and that really helps when it comes to child seat carrying right here in the trunk. Now, the Focus uses these bar and tube style trunk hinges that do impact on the cargo area, but wisely Ford has moved them all the way to the side rather than some vehicles where they're positioned more in the middle. That means they're less likely to interfere with cargo loading in the back. Let's pull out these suitcases. I have a 24-inch roller bag and a 26-inch roller bag right in here. Let's pull these out and see how the trunk area fares. We have a fairly wide and fairly tall trunk area right here. Because our vehicle is the titanium model with the Sony sound system, we have a subwoofer right back here, and that does cut in on your cargo area. When you glance at the trunk, you'll notice that the load floor seems like it could be a little lower, and that's because under the load floor we have some additional storage space as well as a spare tire. But I suspect it won't be a problem at all to insert all 3 child seats. This is our first child seat, and whoops, we can see that the cargo area is not quite wide enough to insert the child seat in this fashion, so we will have to turn them a little bit to insert them. Let's see if we'll be able to turn it back. And there you have it. I was able to fit 3 child seats in the back of the sedan. Of course, if you get the Focus hatchback, it's not quite as long as the sedan, but it is easier to fit child seats in the back because we get a much larger opening. Now, I suspect I'll also be able to insert this 24-inch roller bag right here between those 2 child seats. Let's see how well that works. Keep in mind, I'm not a master of packing cargo, but that does seem like it works. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Again, this has been the 2014 Ford Focus Titanium Sedan. If you want to know more about the Ford Focus for 2014, go ahead and click that banner at the bottom of your screen, and this video will be uploaded in about a day or so. If you want to know more about that 2015 refresh of the Ford Focus Sedan, then go ahead and subscribe to the channel. That video should be up in a few months. I don't really know when I'll be able to get my hands on one, but it is a high priority for me. You can find me over at facebook.com/AlexOnAutos, Twitter as AlexOnAutos, and you can also send your emailed questions to alex@alexonautos.com. I'll see you next week.